Before we get down to the nitty-gritty, I want to thank my animators Adam Midzuk or Kuzim and Tyler Addison for the animations in this video. If you like their work, consider following them on Twitter. Links in the description and comment section below. Now, on with the show. As far as we know, the theropod dinosaurs are one of the most diverse lineages of animals around. They first developed in the mid to late Triassic period and diversified into all manner of wacky shapes and sizes. Some took the mega predator route, others the overprotected herbivore route. Every now and then, a new one is found that bucks the trends already bucked. One of these trailblazers of almost chimeric proportions is a small, weirdly toothed critter from what is now Japan. Meet Fukuivenator. Did you know Edge has merch? Yes, that's right, little Timmy. I have shirts, stickers, and more available on the Edge Redbubble site. It ranges from pogfish to the adorable Simosuchus to the armadillo croc, mosasaurus, and more. Think you'd find something you like? Click the link in the description and the comment section below to get some really cool nerd stuff. Japan wasn't always an island. It used to be the eastern margin of Asia millions of years ago. It only began to split apart from the main continent around 15 million years ago, when megapiranha swam the rivers of the Amazon, megatoothed sharks hunted whales, and raptorial sperm whales ruled the oceans. Despite how built up Japan is now, being one of the most densely populated countries in the world, most of it is covered in forest and mountainous terrain. This means most of the population is crowded into lowland areas. It might be surprising that Japan has a rich fossil history since it's not particularly known for big paleontological finds, but it totally does. The majority of Japan was a sliver of the Eurasian plate that was pulled off due to subducting plates. It is now also composed of volcanoes due to volcanic island arcs created as a result of those darn subducting plates. Japan is therefore a tad different from Hawaii in containing a bunch of different geologic and volcanic structures. Hawaii is a recent series of islands made up entirely of shield volcanoes, while Japan still has a lot of continent in it. As a result, Japan's fossil record is rich and its rock record is deep. The rock record of Japan preserves a bunch of layers which date to the Mesozoic era. If you're searching for Japanese dinosaurs, these are the layers you'd want to find the most. However, outcrops of these layers aren't easy to come by. You see, in order to start digging up bones, you need to actually know where they are, and they have to be somewhat close to the surface. One of the handful of outcrops for the Mesozoic era rock layers is located in Katsuyama City, Fukui Prefecture. Due to the amount of sediments exposed in this area and the fossils found within, a big quarry was set up to continually monitor the area and collect fossils. The quarry was named for the layer which contains the most numerous fossils, the Kitadani Formation. The Kitadani Dinosaur Quarry has produced most of the known Japanese dinosaurs over the years and dates to the Lower Cretaceous period. During the dig season of August 2007, a crew of paleontologists prospecting at the Kitadani Dinosaur Quarry came upon the scattered remains of a small theropod dinosaur. So much of the overall body of the dinosaur was found that it's technically the most complete non-avian dinosaur specimen from Japan. Despite that accolade, the skeleton wasn't found all prim and proper as per Jurassic Park. On the contrary, the skeleton was blown apart in pieces, scattered over an area of 50 by 50 centimeters or 19 square inches. Once all of the fragile little bones were dug up, all details of its location were logged, and the whole package was wrapped in plaster for safety. The specimen was taken back to the Fukui Prefecture Dinosaur Museum. Once preparators could take a crack at the burlap present, they found a large assortment of bones. Parts of the skull, much of the neck, back, hip, and tail vertebrae, parts of the pelvis, ribs from the neck and torso, as well as the chevrons, the little dangly bits on the tail vertebrae. Most of the legs, including the wee little feetsies, and much of the arms were extracted from their rocky prison and thoroughly described in 2016. It was given the uncreative name Fukuivenator paradoxus, with Fukui referring to the Fukui prefecture region in which it was found, venator meaning hunter, and paradoxus simply being a word for paradox, bizarre, or unusual. They gave it the species name paradoxus as it contains a bunch of weird characteristics which seem paradoxical. The skull isn't particularly well preserved, though better than nothing with these little pieces here, the premaxillae, the maxilla here, as well as some other splints of bone from around the eye socket and back of the skull. Chunks of the lower jaw were also preserved. Some of the skull had teeth still in their sockets, and there were some unattached teeth found near the skull. As you can see, the skull was long and ended in a blunt, rounded off tip. It's not very slender from top to bottom, but I wouldn't quite characterize it as deep either. The teeth found associated with the skull are the first weird thing about this sushi-munching fiend. This dinosaur was one of the few with a mouthful of teeth of different shapes and sizes. This condition is called heterodonty, and you may be most familiar with it in your own mouth. Fukuivenator had wide blunt teeth at the very front of the jaws. The shape of these teeth is called spatulate because it's flat from front to back with a blunted tip and a thick base, like a spatula. The descriptors of the beast likened the flat front teeth of Fukuivenator to those of the unrelated Oviraptorosaur, Incisivsaurus, though Incisivsaurus had cartoonishly large buck teeth. After the spatula teeth are a few oddly leaf-shaped teeth. The authors describe these teeth as leaf-like from the side, with an unserrated ridge stretching from the tip of the tooth to its midsection, placed along the midline of the tooth's side. The next teeth are more at home in the mouth of a theropod, as they're strongly recurved and pointy, good for snagging meaty bits. Then the mouth changes things up again, with even more leaf-like teeth after the pointy ones. Clearly, it was capable of processing a bunch of different foodstuffs in its jaws. The front spatula teeth would have been great for cutting plants, the pointy teeth good for slicing and puncturing, and the leaf teeth good for grinding. An omnivore at the very least, with some possibly stricter herbivory included. The brain case of Fukuivenator was preserved as well. There are some images of it, and the researchers made a CT scan. The inner ear was therefore able to be reconstructed despite the fossils flattening from a vertebra during fossilization. The semicircular canal is a set of 3 fluid-filled tubes that help an animal balance. The proportions of the ones in Fukuivenator suggest it had a sense of space equivalent to other ground-based theropod dinosaurs, but the auditory capabilities of the ear were far more advanced than contemporary theropods. In fact, Fukuivenator could hear as well as modern birds. This conclusion was made from the correlation between the length of the cochlea duct and hearing ability in modern birds when compared to the correlation in Fukuivenator. Most of the neck vertebrae were preserved, showing that Fukuivenator had a rather long neck compared to similarly sized theropods. Attached to the neck was a boring torso with all the bells and whistles you'd expect on one of these dinosaurs. Fukuivenator had long, slender shoulder blades and robust coracoids. Slotting into this shoulder girdle were very long arms ending in long, slender hands capped by wicked hand claws. Within the belly were a set of ribs called gastralia, which helped support the animal's abdomen. The pelvis is not super well preserved, which makes it difficult to reconstruct properly. It's also difficult to reconstruct that part of its anatomy since the rest of the body contains a suite of really mismatched parts. Ashley Patch, a paleoartist with many years' experience in recreating extinct animals, has reconstructed the pelvis of Fukuivenator like this. This shape is more general to the theropod group as a whole. This was done due to the evolutionary position Fukuivenator occupies on its tree of life, which I'll get to eventually. As such, it looks a bit odd proportionally. Inserted into the pelvis were 2 pretty much completely preserved legs. The legs were quite long, with a femur shorter than the fibula tibia. The feetsies look like they belong on a dromaeosaur with large toe claws on the innermost big toe. The larger claw and rather mobile bones of this toe mean Fukuivenator probably held that toe off the ground, just like the raptors everyone's always gawking over. This is the main reason I remember this find basically being called a raptor when it was first published. As the evolution would have it, the raised toe with dummy thick killing claw is a common trait that reappears throughout the theropod dinosaur lineage, even to some degree in today's theropods. Hope you've stayed with me all this time. Make sure you click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell to keep up to date with Edge content. Alright, storytime kiddos. I might have some proof that we live in the Berenstain Bears universe. I clearly remember most of the press articles for the description of Fukuivenator, referring to it as an herbivorous or omnivorous raptor or dromaeosaur. That's not the case, as I can't really find any articles like that. Another thing that's weirding me out is that I was triggered to start this video based on an image I saw on Twitter of the reconstructed skeletal cast of Fukuivenator on display at the Fukui Prefecture Dinosaur Museum. It wasn't the skeleton you see here, it was reconstructed differently. I had only recently seen Ashley Patch's new Fukuivenator skeletal diagram and thought there might have been some new research done on it that I was unaware of. To my surprise, there hasn't been, but I still managed to save the images I saw of the new Fukuivenator mount. The post where I saw these images must have been deleted, as I haven't been able to find it since. Here, they reconstructed a bit more like its closest relative, Ornitholestes. The snout's rectangular shape has been reduced. The second toe has been changed to a transitional shape between your average theropod toe and a dromaeosaur toe. It was probably not held as erect as a dromaeosaur since the toe claw wasn't as exaggerated, but more so than in contemporaneous theropods. Hello, this is Destin from the future. This video was written quite some time ago and I'm only getting to it now, which is now in the past from when you're watching it now. In fact, it might have been completely finished long before it's now being publicly released. Weird, huh? Breaking news footnote time for what I just got done saying. Not only am I an ADHD-addled forgetful goldfish, but I don't know Japanese. That will become important here in a sec. Turns out I'm not insane, and this was an example of a big misunderstanding, not living in the Berenstain Bears universe. Though at this point, if you took that seriously, you might be living in that alternate universe. Don't get that reference? Look it up, quite a fascinating read on the Mandela effect, actually. The new skeletal mount of the Fukuivenator isn't a mystery, and I found out where it was posted and why it was changed. Apparently, the skeleton was modeled after a dromaeosaur immediately after it was discovered. The museum staff knew it needed to be changed to accurately reflect the phylogenetic placement made for the specimen in the paper that described the bones. It has taken until the last few months to get it fixed up and renovated. They also took the liberty of renovating the entire exhibit space where the Fukui Prefecture fossils are. They fixed the wrists of the Fukui raptor and put out a bunch more fossils that weren't displayed before. The major difference to the Fukuivenator, as Past Me already went over, is the head and feet. What Past Me didn't talk about is the reasoning behind it. According to translated tweets by the museum itself, they changed the skull to be more akin to a Coelurosaurian theropod. This makes the skull even closer to Ornitholestes and other early offshoots. They changed the feet for a similar reason. Now the sickle-clawed toe is not raised in an arc as it would be in a dromaeosaurid. The purported sickle claw really isn't that much bigger than the other claws, nor is it that proportionally distinct from other theropods that are similar in size or close in evolutionary relationships. They didn't change the rest of the skeleton since it pretty much still fits with the classification of the specimen. Back to Past Me, don't say I'll never own up to my own foibles, you dinosaur enthusiast miscreants. Fukuivenator is a mystery box. It contains a bunch of different characteristics that make it hard to definitively place in one box or another. It exhibits derived or advanced, basal or early diverging, and completely unique features. The authors were able to whittle it down to a Coelurosaurian, This is an enormous clade of theropod dinosaurs which included the tyrannosauroids, the compsognathids, the ostrich dinosaurs, alvarezsaurids, dromaeosaurs, troodontids, therizinosaurs, and of course, birds. That doesn't really say much about the critter itself or what kind of critter it is. It's just a floating name amongst a sea of other Coelurosaurians that don't have a more specific classification. Some parts of Fukuivenator look a lot like a dromaeosaur as a result of convergent evolution. The skull has a few characteristics similar to dromaeosaurs. The length of this splint of bone in the jaw, the size of the holes here, this T-shaped bone here, and more. These characteristics are found in dromaeosaurs, but are not exclusive to them, more to Coelurosauria as a whole. This is unusual if we consider the rest of the skeleton. The hip bones of the original fossil specimen are incomplete. They've been restored both in the paper and in the skeletal mount, in a shape common among earlier theropods. The theropods belong to the much larger clade Saurischia, the lizard hip dinosaurs. This group includes theropods and sauropods. This is due to the way their hips are shaped, more like those of a lizard. How can that be if theropods eventually split off into birds? Shouldn't birds have bird hips? Yes! Turns out the more bird-like theropods continually developed a pelvis which projected backwards towards the tail, rather than the almost X-like shape of earlier theropods. As more bird-like animals evolved, this pelvis continued to bend backwards until you have the bird hips of more avian dinosaurs. Contrastingly, the other group of dinosaurs, the ornithischians, or bird-hip dinosaurs, had bird-like hips to begin with to make room for enormous guts for fermenting vegetation. This comes back around to Fukuivenator because the hips could be more bird-like, as reconstructed in this skeletal by Getaway Trike. The bent backwards nature of this pelvis is a much more advanced feature usually seen in dromaeosaurs and Archaeopteryx grade theropods, not in something like Fukuivenator. Thus, the X-shaped pelvis of the skeleton in the paper, in the museum, and by Ashley Patch. Which is right. As far as I can gather, it would make more sense for it to have a more X-shaped pelvis. But the modern, advanced one cannot be completely ruled out either, since enough of the pelvis is not preserved to confirm it either way. The authors found, based on the total characteristics present in the Fukuivenator bones, that it nests most closely to the late Jurassic Morrison theropod Ornitholestes. Right off the bat, you can see some clear similarities between the two. The one I want to zero in on is the pelvis. If all of the characteristics of Fukuivenator add up to it being somewhat close to Ornitholestes, then it would also follow that Fukuivenator would have somewhat of a similarly shaped pelvis, an X-shaped one. Fukuivenator therefore constitutes an incertae situs, a scientific word which means uncertain placement. Its broader relationships are unknown or undefined, and it has been placed questioningly in either Coelurosauria, as I noted before, or slightly more specifically within the Maniraptoriformes, a clade which includes only the ostrich dinosaurs and the Rhenoraptors, dromaeosaurs, troodons, and birds. I've basically beat the dead horse so much at this point that I'm practicing necromancy, so let's see what can be extrapolated about its biology. The Fukui Prefecture Dinosaur Museum team found their specimen of Fukuivenator to be a subadult individual. They got to this conclusion based on the level of fusion within the skeleton. The more fused the bones are, the more likely they are to belong to a more mature individual, since hatchlings and newborns have a lot of cartilage or unfused bones. This isn't a universal criterion, of course, but is likely the case here. The animal has been estimated to be about 245 centimeters, 2.4 meters, 96 inches, or 8 feet long. God, I hate this country's measuring system. They also estimated that this individual may have weighed around 25 kilograms or 55 pounds. The team figured these estimates from an empirical equation for estimating theropod body mass, which just so happens to be similar to the predicted body mass for the ancestral Maniraptoriforms. It's definitely possible a fully mature Fukuivenator could reach a little bit larger than this. Since Fukuivenator is a Coelurosaur of some kind, and since it's comparatively small to other Coelurosaurs, the thing was probably covered in head to toe in feathers. The extent of this feathery covering and how advanced those feathers were is entirely speculative. It could have had advanced pennaceous feathers like dromaeosaurs, and like what's speculated to be on Ornitholestes, or it could have just been simple monofilaments like what you see in Sinosauropteryx and Bapiosaurus. Based on its teeth and anatomy, Fukuivenator couldn't have been exclusively a carnivore. The Lower Cretaceous Kitadani Formation also preserves a whole bunch of plant fossils. As of the writing of this video, there is a strong presence of cycads and conifers, and an unusual lack of ferns. This provides us with a very interesting scenario. If you're a small carnivorous dinosaur, fruit would be a welcome snack. They're full of sugars and fibers to supplement your protein and fat intake. Over time, this might result in an organism that can better process plant material. Flowering plants had yet to appear to a great extent in the time and place of Fukuivenator, so the only fruit-bearing plants around were cycads. Cycads are quite toxic to most animals alive today, and would have been quite toxic to most animals in the past as well. However, the dinosaurs adapted a way around this. The most edible parts of the cycad were apparently the fleshy capsule which covered the kernel-shaped seeds of the cycad. This is the fruit dinosaurs were after. Some dinosaur fossils have been found with cycad seeds within their gut cavities and within fossilized dung. Obviously, they had a way to deal with the toxins. There are some modern animals which can deal with the toxins too, like insects and bats, so we know it can be done. So, this illustration by Yoshua Knut showing Fukuivenator cracking down on a cycad seed isn't completely bunk as I originally assumed. Sorry, Yoshua. The thing is, dinosaurs never really chewed their food like us mammals do. The most some could do was slice hunks of things into slightly smaller hunks of things before swallowing, with the majority of dinosaurs just swallowing food whole. This might have saved a lot of dinosaurs from the toxins in cycads. They simply didn't chew it or digest it enough to absorb the toxins. I don't want to imagine the pain of plopping out a dozen cycad seeds out the cloaca. Aside from salads, Fukuivenator could utilize its elongated second toe to pin down small mammals, like Symmetrolestes. A variety of turtles scuttled through the scum of the rivers in this environment, ranging from soft-shelled turtles to terrestrial tortoise-like Basilames, and the omnivorous freshwater terrapin-like Atticus. This would have offered a great, tasty meal to Fukuivenator if it could manage to get past the shell. While it was pecking a turtle's shell, it had to be careful as the large goniopholidid crocodilians patrolled the waterways and rested along the banks. The other dinosaurs of this geochron include a bunch of dinosaurs named after the prefecture. Fukuiraptor, a 4-meter megaraptoran. Fukuisaurus, a rather basic iguanodontian. Fukuipteryx, a bird-like dinosaur. And Fukuititan, a medium-sized titanosaur. The extremely fragmentary hadrosauroid Koshisaurus was also part of this ecosystem. Though Fukuivenator has yet to find a solid foot among the theropod family tree, it shows that theropod evolution took many twists and turns we couldn't have imagined. Many lineages only flirted with herbivory, while others took very strongly to it. Japan is home to a group of animals that are different from the rest. As different as they were, these animals are clearly more similar to mainland animals because when they were alive, Japan wasn't an island. It's possible more relatives of Fukuivenator may be found either in Japan or in the stretches of Asia that once contacted the land of the rising sun. Make sure you leave a like and comment on this video, share it around, and subscribe. While you're at it, ring the notification bell too if you want to stay in the know with everything Edge. Thanks for watching. Want to help Edge out? Subscribe to the Patreon at any tier you like for a whole smorgasbord of delicious offerings. Many thanks to Thea Svensson, Steve Bradshaw, Staniforth Hopkins, Nattycat, Dinosaur, Arda Bayer, Abby Smith, Henry Brennan, Dana Manchester, Chris Frampton, and Antron. You've all helped to make this channel possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you.